Kiana slides into the top 3 for mid lane, Vel'Koz slots in for support, and Kha'Zix will be making an appearance for jungle as we provide you guys with 3 of the best solo carries for every single role in 25.17. And it's no secret that League's ranking system is designed to trap you. It pulls you in with those games where everything clicks and you carry hard, only to balance it with frustrating matches that feel unwinnable from the start. This cycle keeps you grinding, hoping for change but never quite breaking through. What most players don't realize is that escaping this cycle requires specific skills and strategies tailored to your exact rank. That's where SkillCapped comes in. We're the only service in this industry that has invested millions of dollars into identifying what actually works at every tier. Our challenger coaches have mapped out the best and most useful strategies that turn hard-stuck players into consistent climbers. And you can access all of this expertise for less than $9 a month with our annual plan. We're so confident in our methods that our business model depends on your success. Climb at least 5 divisions while actively using SkillCapped or claim a full refund. No questions asked. Stop wasting time on the ranked treadmill. Start climbing today with proven strategies designed specifically to break through your current rank. Check us out by clicking the link in the top right corner or in the description below. And with that being said, let's get into it. Indirectly buffed last patch and one of the best fighter top lane champs that you can play for solo queue is Olaf. So Olaf is loving the experimental hexplate buffs as the champion's dueling power on that item completion is absolutely insane. Olaf is just a stat check monster right now because if you get a lead on him, then there's literally nothing the enemy can do, as you just auto attack them to death with all the attack speed you get from hexplate and your W. Matchup wise for Olaf, Fiora can be a little more tricky to play into as her W reduces attack speed, so it's a more difficult lane to snowball off of. If you get ahead on Olaf in lane, you really want to try and keep a freeze on your side of the lane because Olaf thrives when he has the entire lane to run the enemy down. In Strumpus' new full game commentary that he has on our website, we can see this in action. Strumpus purposely pulls the wave and doesn't let it crash into his tower. After going to grab a plant in the river, the freeze eventually breaks, but the wave remains on his side of the lane. So he now has this window where if Fiora walks up, he just wants to try an all-in because he's a level up on her. And with chunking Fiora out really hard, it allows Brand to swoop in from behind and finish off the kill. So that entire play started due to Strumpus pulling the wave and keeping the wave on his side of the lane, as you never want to be mindlessly shoving and throwing Qs at the wave with Olaf if you can beat the enemy in the 1v1. These top lane champions who have the ability to skirmish well early game and take matters into their own hands are really good for solo queue, and Warwick is another. Warwick was nerfed last patch, but the changes really didn't influence his overall power level all that much. Warwick continues to absolutely thrive when playing into meta fighters like Mordekaiser, Aatrox, Mbessa, Irelia, and Renekton. The only matchup Warwick has a very negative win rate into is Teemo, so he's a good ban to consider. Teemo's blind counters Warwick's kit extremely hard, as he's 100% reliant on getting auto attacks off to be effective in skirmishes. Early on in lane with Warwick, you really need to be able to get comfortable with making the lane as volatile as possible. Fighting level 1 is something you want to do a lot of the time with Warwick, so it's definitely a bit of a playstyle shift that you'll need to get used to. The lower Warwick drops on health, the stronger he becomes, so even if you take an early trade that ends up with you sitting on 30% health and the enemy is a little higher at 50% because you have barrier and because you become stronger at lower health, your health bar never tells the full story and can bait the enemy into a false sense of security a lot of the time. A 30% health Warwick and a 50% health enemy is more so like a 50-50 situation because Warwick is more often than not going to win the straight up 1v1 in that situation. The optimal build for Warwick consists of a Blade of the Ruined King Rush into Stridebreaker second, and then Lethal Tempo is the best Keystone rune. A top lane champ who's getting indirectly stronger for 25.17 and back on the solo carry list again is Quinn. So Riot has buffed Profane Hydra this patch by reducing the cost of the item by 350 gold and lowering the AD by 5. Since 5 AD has a gold value of 175, this means Profane Hydra is now 175 gold more efficient for 25.17. For the past while now, it's been Shiv as the more popular rush item on Quinn, but that is definitely going to change moving forward due to these Profane buffs. We're back to full out lethality Quinn with a Hydra rush into the Collector second and Edge of Night third as the standard core build. What makes Quinn such a lethal top laner for solo queue is her ability to dominate the majority of meta matchups she runs into. Melee top laners are by far the most popular in solo queue, and Quinn has such an easy time generating advantages in those matchups. The best way to guarantee success in solo queue is by hard winning lane yourself and not having to rely on your teammates to pick up the slack, and Quinn's kit allows you to do just that. The only melee matchup that can be more annoying to play into is Malphite because he can just stack armor and negate a lot of your snowball potential, so he's a good ban to consider. By far the best jungler that you can play if you are Emerald or below in 25.17 is Volibear. We're actually pretty surprised Volibear did not get nerfed for this patch because he's absolutely dominating in every single elo bracket right now. Champ is definitely a little bit better for the lower elos, but even in ranks diamond and above, he's a top percentile jungler. Volibear is such an impressive jungler if he gets a lead because there's very little counterplay unless the enemy team has a mass amount of CC. If you're on your 2-item spike and have R available, the skirmish that Volley has is incredible, as his consistent consistent damage output and durability are both amazing. This clip does a really good job at showcasing just how insane Volley is when he's got Cosmic Drive with Flicker Blades, as over the course of the entire fight, he's able to use E 3 times and proc the shield on himself every single time, which is the difference maker in keeping him alive for that long of a duration. W heals are also insane, as they were healing him for upwards of 450 health per hit. Your ban when picking Volley is never wasted on a meta peel support, so Melio or Braum are two good options right now. So with a ton of junglers nerfed last patch, one champion who has gained in relative power and joining the top 3 for 25.17 is Kindred. So Kindred is one of the best junglers if you're rated Emerald or above right now. If you're below Emerald, then just sticking to something easier like Volibear is the play. But for those of you who are in the upper tiers of play, Kindred is a phenomenal pick right now. Not only were so many meta junglers nerfed last patch, which has helped Kindred out, but she was indirectly buffed from Kraken Slayer receiving buffs a few patches ago. Our challenger jungler Skillshot is a big Kindred player, and he's got 7 full game commentaries for the champ up on our website, which are great resources if you're looking to pick up Kindred. Champs who have point and click damage you can't outplay with your mobility are who Kindred can struggle more against, so Kha'Zix is a good ban to consider. The core build you should be looking to run on Kindred consists of a Kraken Slayer rush into the Collector second and Infinity Edge third, while Press the Attack is the optimal Keystone rune. An assassin jungler who has been steadily climbing in priority lately and who can look to benefit from the 25.17 item changes is Kha'Zix. Ka is currently the best assassin jungler for solo queue, and with Profane Hydra buff for this patch, it has potential to provide him with even more power. Not a ton of Ka players had been running Profane prior to this patch, so it's tough to say if it will become optimal on him for this patch, but in place of opportunity, it's definitely an option now. You don't necessarily need the movement speed passive from opportunity as much as other assassins because the stealth from Kha'Zix are, so we can definitely see Profane taking over priority now. So even though the Profane buff should be nice, in 25.16 we saw a wide array of meta junglers nerfed, like Trundle, Jarvan, Xin Zhao, and Viego, so it's the main reason to why Kha'Zix is now back in a top tier spot. One matchup that can give Ka players some issues is Warwick, as his damage reduction and sustain makes it harder for Ka to assassinate as easy as he'd like. If you have Volley as your blind pick jungler for this patch, and then Ka is your jungler that you play into more squishy enemy comps, then that's really all you need for this current meta. A mid laner who has seen a huge spike in power over these past 2 patches and in the top 3 for 25.17 is Qiyana. So Qiyana was directly buffed in 25.16, and now this patch she's getting indirectly buffed due to the Profane Hydra changes. The item Axiom Arc is even buffed for this patch too, and even though it's been a pretty niche item in the past, Qiyana could look to slot it in now as a third purchase. Something along the lines of a Hubris Rush into Hydra second and Axiom Arc third should become a lot better moving forward. The key to succeeding with Qiyana, and with most assassins in general, is to focus on controlling Fog of War on the side of the map where the next objective is spawning. Qiyana is such a lethal champion when fighting around choke points and around walls because of the way her R works, so forcing enemies to face check into you is going to set yourself up for incredibly easy kills in the mid game. Fighting around Otacon is an absolute must with Qiyana unless your team is incredibly far behind. If the entire enemy team is in around the Otacon pit, then the chance of you getting a multi-man R off is incredibly high. One matchup that you will want to try and avoid when picking Qiyana is Sylas, as Sylas stealing Qiyana R can be really annoying to deal with in the later stages of the game. One of the better melee mids that you can look to pick into Qiyana, and rivaling her as the best mid lane assassin for 25.17 is Diana. So Diana just continues to remain a great mid lane pick patch after patch, and nothing is going to change that outlook for 25.17. For a melee assassin, it's pretty difficult for enemies to punish Diana early on in lane because she can just sit back and farm with Q in a ranged matchup. If you get to level 3 without getting poked out, then the trading power of Diana is hard for any mid lane champion to match. Level 6, you hit a massive power spike with your R as it turns Diana into a very powerful skirmishing champion who can contest grub fights really well. The only bigger downside to Diana is the fact that once she's in a fight, there's no backing out, so choosing your openings wisely is important to find maximum success with her. Since Diana needs to dive in to be effective, champions who can counter that are who Diana is going to struggle more against, and it makes Galio a good ban choice. You're either rushing Storm Surge or Rocket Belt depending on if you value higher burst or higher durability. Into a full squishy comp, going Storm Surge makes sense, but if the enemy team is going to be stacking more health, then you can take Rocket Belt so that your extended fight is a bit better. Electrocute is the standard keystone for Diana, and then for secondaries, you can take either Sorcery or Resolve depending on your lane opponent. If the enemy is a melee mid, then going Resolve and taking Bone Plating is good value, but if you're in a ranged matchup, then Bone Plating loses a lot of value, and therefore going Sorcery is the way. Buffed again in 25.17 and back in the top 3 for mid lane is going to be Morgana. So Morgana mid is by far the most underrated champ in the game right now because of how easy she is to play relative to her current power. W is buffed for this patch so that the damage is up early on and the mana cost is lowered at max rank. So you have even stronger shoving strength with Morgana early on in lane, and since you max W out first on the champ, lesser mana cost at max rank on a spell you want to be consistently spamming on the wave is amazing. Our challenger mid laner Shori does a really good job at showcasing this early game power power on Morgana in his recent full game commentary. When you think about power spikes in lane, you don't really think of level 5 being one for the majority of champs, but since Morgana's W begins one-shotting the ranged minions when she has 3 points in the spell, level 5 is actually a really nice spike for her. We can see in this clip here that Shori just throws his W down on the wave and it instantly clears out the ranged minions in one go. This is where Morgana becomes incredibly obnoxious because there's nothing the enemy can really do to stop your push, and you can just keep spamming W on the wave, which takes no skill at all to generate priority in lane. And then once you tick level 6 and get your R, Skirmish is really good with Morg, especially if you have a jungler who's got some CC, which can make landing your Q much easier. The build to run in Morgana mid consists of a Blackfire Torch Rush into Leandri's second and Zanya's third, and then Comet is going to be your keystone rune. A top 3 ADC for 25.17 and a champ who fits so well into the chaotic nature of solo queue is Jinx. Jinx has been a really strong ADC for the majority of the season, as everything has fallen in place really nicely for her. Meta build feels great, and you always know that if you can reach a couple of items, then all it takes is that one kill in a team fight to completely flip the switch. Jinx's passive gives her that solo carry factor that few other ADCs have, as she can completely take over a fight on her own and clean up kills better than any other ADC. A really nice thing about Jinx as well is that you don't need to worry at all as to who your support is going to play, because Jinx can pair up with pretty much anything and be impactful. She's great with melee engaged supports because she can follow up and chain CC really well with her E. With enchanters, the mid-game teamfight impact is incredible, as you just sit back with fish bones from range, and it's really difficult for enemies to deal with you if you've got an enchanter with peel strength by your side. Long range engage is the only thing that's going to be more difficult for Jinx to deal with, so banning out a meta dive champ like Jarvan or Zed is a good idea. The core build for Jinx is going to revolve around a Yuntal Rush into Infinity Edge second and Hurricane third, while Lethal Tempo is your keystone rune. The one ADC in meta right now that anyone can win with is Sivir. Sivir has been in the top 3 for a pretty long time now, so she's been a really great champion to invest time into. Sivir's ability to shove waves very quickly is something that gives her an edge up on most other ADCs. Since Sivir can acquire the push if she wants to, it allows for you to acquire lane priority and really hem the enemy under tower. Sivir is going to work really well with mage supports or an enchanter like Karma, because if you can shove the enemy under tower and then poke away at them while they try to last hit minions, it's so difficult for the enemy to dodge your poke and secure last hits at the same time. Especially in the lower ranks, just by shoving the enemy under tower, you can amass a nice CS lead because lower elo ADCs and supports are going to have a much more difficult time coordinating last hits under tower. Sivir Morgana is actually a pretty nasty lane now, with Morg getting all that added damage to her W, as Morgana can just spam W on the wave to help Sivir push, and then the double spell shield from that lane makes it really hard for an enemy melee support to ever engage onto you. The build that you want to prioritize on Sivir consists of a Yuntal Rush into Infinity Edge second and Flicker Blades third, while Lethal Tempo is the best keystone rune. Since Sivir wants to get the push in lane, banning out an ADC who does a good job at matching that early on like Ashe is a good idea. An ADC who's very underrated right now, who's gotten much stronger over the past few patches, is Vayne. So many items that Vayne likes to buy have been buffed, like Kraken Slayer, Blade of the Rune King, and then last patch we saw Experimental Hexblade buffed. Hexblade in its limited sample size on Vayne is actually performing very well and slotting in as a solid third purchase. Once you have your Blade into Rage Blade or Kraken into Rage Blade core, there's no must-buy item on Vayne from then on out, so Hexblade in games where that added durability would be of good value makes it a really nice pickup. If the enemy team has a very heavy dive comp, then going for Hexblade so that you gain the health and also the movement speed from its passive will help you kite around and survive in fights so much easier. In terms of Kraken or Blade of the Rune King, damage is going to be higher with Kraken, but you're getting the sustain from Blade. So depending on how the lane is going, you can swap between the two, as an easier lane side with Kraken, but if you're getting poked and having a more difficult time in lane, Blade of the Rune King value goes up. Since Vayne is a shorter range, playing into longer ranged ADCs can be more difficult in lane, and with Ashe being in a pretty good spot right now, she's a good ban to consider. Joining the top 3 for support in 25.17 as one of the best carry supports in the role is Vel'Koz. The reason for Vel'Koz's promotion is due to Horizon Focus getting buffed for this patch, as it's an item you can look to rush on Vel'Koz support. Riot has provided Horizon Focus 10 extra AP, and the cost went down by 50 gold, so in total, the item is 250 gold more efficient now. The item is really nice to have on Vel'Koz in the mid game because you can use your Q as a way to scout out brush so that you don't have to face check, and if your Q lands on an enemy and procs the Horizon passive to give you that vision, it really helps to gain control back around objectives. So a core of Horizon into Leandri's is something you'll want to try on your Vel'Koz for this patch, with Realm Spike as the item upgrade. With Vel'Koz support, your big spike is when you hit that level 6. A Q into R combo at level 6 is going to delete half the enemy's health bar, so it opens up for you to take complete control of the lane. A lot of the times the enemy doesn't even need to be in kill range for this combo to be useful, as just chunking the enemy ADC out and giving you and your ADC a major health advantage can be a big win in and of itself. Long range catch threat and burst are going to be what Vel'Koz struggles playing into most, so banning out Pyke is always a good idea. A mainstay in the support top 3 for a while now, and back again again for 25.17 is Melio. So if there's just one enchanter support that you are spamming for solo queue right now, it should definitely be Melio. Lulu has lost a lot of power from her recent nerfs, so in terms of enchanter strength, nobody is matching Melio. The champ just has everything and more that you're looking for in an enchanter, as his ability to buff up his carries and keep them alive is incredible. The fact Melio R provides that cleanse is such a massive tool for team fighting around key objectives, because it allows your fed carry to play on the edge a bit more and be aggressive with the lead without having to worry about getting caught out. Whoever the most fed member is on your team, you really want to be keying in on them in fights while playing Melio, as your job is to enable them to take over the game. Something that's really underrated build-wise on Melio is rushing Ardent Sensor. If the enemy bot lane lacks burst power, then going Ardent over Echoes of Helia is a really good idea to provide your ADC with additional damage. If the enemy team is super heavy burst and you just need to focus on keeping your carries alive, then Echoes into Moonstone is the play. However, if you're into more consistent damage enemy comps, slotting in Ardent Sensor is really good. Matchup-wise for Melio, he plays quite well into most melee supports, but one who is worth a ban is Blitzcrank. Melio Q counters champs that need to dive into melee range, but doesn't counter long-range pick power like a Blitz Hook. So if a Blitz Hook lands on one of your carries, there's much less you can look to do to save them, as opposed to if a Leona dove into melee range. So with all the changes we've seen down in bot lane over the past couple of patches, it's really put some separation between Leona and the rest of the melee support class. Leona has been a really good pick for a while, but because other melee supports like Braum, Rel, and Alistar have been nerfed, it's given her an additional edge up. Matchup-wise for Leona, there are a few supports that you'll want to try and avoid playing into, as it's mainly champs who have strong disengage power. Melio and Braum are two picks that you'll have a harder time playing into as Leona, because they can nullify a lot of your engage power, so either is worth a ban. Melio, with his higher play rate, is definitely the higher value ban for 25.17. A lot of the time when playing Leona, your matchup isn't going to matter nearly as much as how you identify windows of opportunity and punish enemy mispositioning. Leona thrives when she can isolate a carry and chain CC them for her team to follow up, so playing to numbers advantages and pulling the trigger when you have the numbers in your favor is a key fundamental to succeeding with Leona. For Leona's core items, it's going to be Locket into Knight's Vow. You have 3 different options for your item upgrade on Leona, and you can't really go wrong with any of them, but each is slightly better in different spots. Celestial Opposition is most optimal if the enemy comp has a significant amount of burst damage. Solstice Slay is nice if your ADC lacks a gap closer, as the movement speed it provides gives them some much needed mobility. And then Blood Song is the all-out offensive option that's great if you're snowballing and playing with an ADC like Trist or Lucian who have mobility in their kits, so the movement speed from Solstice Slay isn't as important for them. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference. So there you have it everyone, a complete look at 3 of the best solo carries for every single role in 25.17. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.